People love to believe that their thoughts can shape reality. It's comforting, even thrilling, to imagine that if we think the right way, or pray the right way, or vibrate at the right frequency, the universe might listen and deliver. Sometimes it even seems to work. You picture the job, and then a week later, someone calls about an opening. You imagine meeting the right person, and then a stranger starts talking to you at a cafe. These moments feel charged with a kind of electric significance. It's a jolt, a catch in your breath. Your rational mind says coincidence, but your heart insists conspiracy in the best possible way. It feels as if life itself were leaning in to whisper, "Yes, I heard you." But psychology offers a different way to understand that feeling of connection between thought and outcome. It doesn't deny it, and it doesn't mock it. It just traces how belief, attention, and behavior weave together to create something that feels spiritual, but is, in truth, profoundly human. And I'm not immune to it. I'm a psychologist, but I've had those moments, the jolt of a perfect coincidence, the uncanny timing of an opportunity, where my first instinct isn't analysis, it's awe. I've felt that whisper. Understanding the how doesn't erase the wow. Every culture in history has contained some version of manifestation: prayer, intention, ritual, or the spoken wish. Across time, these practices have been ways of translating longing into language, and language into meaning. For some, manifestation is a spiritual contract with God or the universe. For others, it's a secular practice of self-belief and visualization. In either case, what lies beneath it isn't superstition. It's the mind's deep need to feel that life has a pattern, that chaos isn't all there is, that we're not helpless passengers in the face of randomness. That longing for order is ancient. The human brain was built to find patterns because pattern recognition once kept us alive. A rustle in the grass could mean danger or wind, and the ability to infer cause from coincidence meant survival. Even now, we look for meaning everywhere: dreams, numbers, chance encounters, lyrics that seem to arrive at the perfect moment. When something aligns with what we're hoping for, it feels divine. And in that moment, we touch the edge of what we call manifestation.
Hello and welcome to The Psychology of Us with Professor RJ Starr, where we explore the mind's influence on life, relationships, and society. RJ Starr is an existential psychologist, professor, and author dedicated to exploring the core challenges of human existence, how we find meaning, embrace responsibility, and navigate life's challenges. Known for a thought-provoking yet accessible approach, RJ inspires listeners to cultivate self-awareness, emotional intelligence, authenticity, and purpose. This podcast is designed for all psychology enthusiasts, practitioners, students, and anyone curious about why we think, feel, and behave the way we do. Each episode unpacks theories, explores complex questions, and offers insights that deepen understanding of the human experience. So settle in, stay curious, and discover the psychology of us.
One of my former students once told me a story that perfectly captured this manifestation idea. She had been struggling for months to find a new apartment. Nothing worked out. Everything fell through. And frankly, she was exhausted. One night, she wrote a letter to the universe asking for help. Nothing fancy, just a small ritual she'd read about online. The next morning, her phone rang. A friend of a friend was moving out of a studio in her dream neighborhood and wanted someone to take over the lease immediately. She moved in within the week. She said to me later, "Professor Starr, I know it sounds silly, but I really think I manifested it." I told her it doesn't sound silly at all, that from a psychological point of view, what she experienced was both real and explainable. Because what she had done, perhaps without realizing it, was clarify her intention. She had turned a vague hope into a defined image. And once that image was formed, Her brain began to work on her behalf, filtering information differently, staying alert to opportunity, and signaling relevance where before there was only noise. This is the quiet power of selective attention. And let's be honest, it's a superpower we all have. Deep in your brainstem is a system called the reticular activating system, or RAS. Think of it as your brain's bouncer. It stands at the velvet rope of your consciousness, deciding what's VIP and what's just noise. When you buy a new car, suddenly you see that model everywhere, right? That's your RAS at work. The world hasn't changed. Your brain's bouncer just got a new guest list. When you decide you want to move, find love, or start a business, your brain begins scanning the environment for cues that match that focus. Opportunities that were always there suddenly stand out. So when people say, I manifested it, what's often happening is this: intention directs attention, attention shapes perception, and perception guides behavior. Over time, those micro shifts create outcomes that feel uncanny, not because the universe rearranged itself, but because you did. Belief is an incredibly powerful psychological engine. Albert Bandura's research on self-efficacy, our belief in our ability to accomplish tasks, showed that expectation alone can determine performance. When you believe success is possible, you invest more effort, recover faster from setbacks, and persist longer when things get difficult. Expectancy theory in cognitive psychology echoes this. Our outcomes often follow the direction of our expectations. So, manifestation isn't mystical in the cosmic sense, it's motivational in the behavioral sense. Visualization, one of the core techniques in manifestation, also has solid psychological roots. Sports psychologists use it extensively. When athletes vividly imagine a performance, the same neural circuits activate as when they're physically executing it. The mental rehearsal primes the nervous system, making the real action more fluent. The same principle applies to goals in daily life. Imagining yourself succeeding increases the likelihood that you'll recognize the pathways to get there. But there's another side to this story, the emotional one. Manifestation feels spiritual because it connects us to meaning. When people pray, meditate, or visualize, they're engaging the mind's narrative network, the same system that helps us construct identity and interpret experience. And in those moments, we feel woven into something larger. Whether you call it God, the universe, or simply consciousness itself, that sensation of alignment satisfies a deep psychological need for coherence. Viktor Frankl once wrote that humans are meaning-seeking creatures. We can endure almost any suffering if we understand why. Manifestation gives suffering direction. It tells us our desires are part of a story unfolding with purpose. That belief doesn't just comfort, it stabilizes. It can regulate stress, reduce anxiety, and strengthen persistence, all of which are measurable psychological benefits. From that angle, faith and manifestation are less about altering reality and more about preserving emotional equilibrium in the face of uncertainty. Of course, belief has limits. When it turns from hope into certainty, when someone insists that thinking alone will bring them a job, a cure, or a relationship, it can slip into what psychology calls magical thinking. This is the cognitive bias that assumes mental states can directly cause external events without mediation by action or probability. Children go through a stage of magical thinking when they believe that wishing can make things happen. Most of us outgrow it, but parts of it still linger because it feels good. It's comforting to believe that thought has that kind of power. The risk is subtle but serious. When outcomes don't align with the vision, people may blame themselves. Maybe I didn't believe hard enough. Others might swing to grandiosity. I am co-creating the universe. Everything happens because of my energy. Both distortions pull the person away from psychological realism. They externalize control, crediting or blaming unseen forces, instead of acknowledging human complexity, social conditions, or just plain chance. Psychologically, this can erode what's known as an internal locus of control. That's the belief that our actions, not external fate, shape outcomes. Decades of research show that people with an internal locus of control tend to cope better with stress, achieve more, and adapt faster. Manifestation culture sometimes reverses that, encouraging an external locus disguised as empowerment. Ask the universe, it says, but rarely build systems, cultivate habits, and face failure directly. Still, dismissing all spiritual language around manifestation would be missing the point. The mind and spirit are not competitors, they are parallel descriptions of the same inner experience. What religion or New Age culture calls faith, psychology might call positive expectancy and cognitive alignment. What mystics describe as the universe responding, psychologists interpret as the feedback loop between attention, emotion, and action. The language differs, but the process, shifting the mind toward possibility, remains the same.
Have you ever wished there was a clear, intelligent guide to understanding the human mind and emotions? Without the jargon, without the shortcuts. The Psychology of Being Human, an authoritative guide to mind, emotion, and meaning, was written to do exactly that. Psychology educator RJ Starr brings together decades of research, teaching, and lived insight to show how we think, feel, and make meaning. The book offers fresh perspectives on emotional maturity, identity, belief, and the ways our inner lives shape our choices, relationships, and resilience. There has never been a single work that brings together this full spectrum of what it means to be a human being, mind, emotion, and meaning, into one coherent and practical framework. This book is an unflinching, deeply informed exploration for anyone who wants to understand themselves and others with greater depth, clarity, and compassion. In an age of noise, distraction, and polarization, it offers a rare and essential way of seeing the mind and emotions as they truly are. You'll find chapters that explore the structure of thought and emotion, how beliefs take root and resist change, and why emotional capacity matters more than emotional control. Each idea is grounded in psychological science, yet written in a way that feels personal, relevant, and easy to connect with. What sets this book apart is the way it treats complexity, not as something to be simplified or glossed over, but as something to understand and navigate with confidence. It doesn't shy away from the hard truths about avoidance, distortion, and performance, but it also offers a way forward that respects both your intelligence and your humanity. It's rigorous but readable, grounded in science, yet deeply human. Whether you're in the field of psychology or simply curious about understanding yourself and others more deeply, this is a book you'll want to keep close. The Psychology of Being Human, an authoritative guide to mind, emotion, and meaning, will be released worldwide on September 20th, 2025, with pre-orders opening August 15th. Reserve your copy early and be part of the first wave of readers to explore this groundbreaking work by Professor RJ Starr.
Imagine someone who has lost confidence after a series of disappointments. They start affirming, I am worthy of love. I will find connection. On paper, that looks like wishful thinking, but something happens inside. Posture changes. Tone of voice softens. Openness returns. Other people pick up on it unconsciously. The environment begins to respond differently, not because energy waves are rearranging the cosmos, but because human communication is reciprocal. Confidence draws curiosity. Warmth invites warmth. In this sense, manifestation is simply emotional contagion guided by belief. That doesn't make it any less profound. In fact, understanding it this way restores its dignity. The mind's ability to transform perception and behavior is itself a kind of miracle, one we don't need to mystify in order to respect. There's also a neurological dimension to why manifestation rituals, writing intentions, repeating affirmations, lighting candles, why these can feel powerful. Ritual, regardless of religious content, has measurable effects on the nervous system. It organizes emotion, provides structure, and signals safety. Even placebo studies show that belief and expectation can trigger physiological changes, pain reduction, immune response, mood improvement. When you perform a ritual of manifestation, you're essentially engaging your body's placebo pathways for hope and control. The effects are real, even if the explanation isn't supernatural. But manifestation without action eventually collapses. Gabriel Ottingen's research on mental contrasting found that positive fantasizing about the future without confronting the obstacles to it can actually decrease motivation. The brain experiences imagined success as partially real, reducing the drive to actually pursue it. The more productive method combines visualization with realism. Imagine the desired outcome, then picture the barriers and form a plan. That's where manifestation becomes psychologically effective, not as wishful thinking, but as cognitive rehearsal for behavior. This distinction matters because many people use manifestation during moments of vulnerability, after heartbreak, job loss, illness, or uncertainty. In those times, belief becomes a lifeline. It can restore a sense of agency when everything feels out of control. So it's important to honor the emotional intelligence of that process. When someone says, I manifested my healing, what they often mean is, I refused to give up on myself. That's not delusion, that's resilience translated through spiritual language. And in that sense, manifestation isn't about bending reality to our will. It's about reorienting ourselves within reality. It's a psychological compass pointing us toward what we value, giving structure to desire and hope. When we engage it wisely, it helps us act in alignment with meaning rather than fear. What psychology can offer is precision, the ability to see where the line is between empowerment and illusion. It reminds us that thought alone doesn't move mountains, but it can move the person who climbs them. And that's no small thing. So, what's a healthy way to think about manifestation? Maybe it's this: focus your mind, clarify your values, visualize the outcome vividly, and then behave as the kind of person who could make it real. The magic isn't in the universe, it's in the consistency between what you believe and how you live. I think about that student sometimes, the one who wrote her letter to the universe. She still lives in that same apartment, but she told me later that what really changed wasn't the place, it was her mindset. After writing the letter, she stopped approaching the search from desperation and started from calm expectation. She reached out to people, followed up on leads, and stayed alert. The coincidence of timing just gave the story its sparkle. But underneath, what moved her life forward was focus, hope, and action, three of the mind's most reliable tools. The line between spirituality and psychology is thinner than we think. Both speak to the same yearning, to feel that our inner world and outer world are connected. In religion, that connection takes the form of divine relationship. In psychology, it takes the form of coherence, our thoughts, emotions, and actions forming a unified whole. When those align, life feels less fragmented. Whether you call that spiritual harmony or cognitive integration, it's the same experience dressed in different language. So perhaps we don't have to choose between science and spirit. We can understand manifestation psychologically while still honoring its emotional truth. Because what people are really doing when they manifest isn't conjuring outcomes. It's declaring what they're ready to notice, what they're willing to pursue, and what they're open to receiving. It's a rehearsal for hope. Hope, by the way, is not a soft word. In psychology, hope is measurable. It's the combination of agency, the belief that you can shape events, and pathways, the ability to see routes toward a goal. Manifestation, at its healthiest, is simply the emotional rehearsal of hope. You imagine a future vivid enough that your brain starts preparing for it. Your habits begin forming around it, and your decisions start leading toward it. And yet, there's value in keeping a little mystery alive. Life is full of convergences that logic can't entirely explain. Sometimes timing really is uncanny. Sometimes something feels guided, not random. It may not be proof of cosmic orchestration, but it can still be meaningful. That sense of awe, the recognition that our minds participate in something larger than themselves, is psychologically nourishing. Awe expands perspective, reduces ego, and increases pro-social behavior. When people experience awe, they become more generous, more patient, more connected. If manifestation practices invite that feeling, then they serve an authentic psychological purpose. So perhaps the question isn't whether manifestation is real. It's real in the sense that belief, focus, and meaning are real. And those things change us. The deeper question is, what kind of reality are we creating through the stories we tell about our own power? If we frame it as partnership with the universe, fine. If we frame it as collaboration between cognition and behavior, also fine. What matters is that we understand the responsibility embedded in the idea. Belief is not a substitute for effort. It's the beginning of it. The mind is not a genie, and the universe is not a wish-granting machine. But the conversation between what we imagine and what we act upon is one of the most intimate, consequential dialogues we'll ever have. That's what manifestation really is, a psychological dialogue between intention and execution, meaning and movement. And maybe that's enough. Maybe the truest form of magic isn't thought creating matter, but thought organizing the self, turning chaos into direction and direction into action. The moment we decide what to focus on, our perception shifts, our choices evolve, and our world begins to change, one behavior at a time. When belief feels like magic, what you're really witnessing is the human mind doing what it's always done, turning the invisible into the visible through attention, persistence, and meaning. You don't need to explain that as divine intervention to be amazed by it. You just need to recognize it as psychology in motion, the quiet alchemy of consciousness that turns a thought into a path, and a path into a life.
That wraps up this episode of The Psychology of Us with Professor RJ Starr. Each conversation is a step toward greater understanding of ourselves, each other, and the forces that shape human behavior. Listeners are invited to continue the conversation by sharing their thoughts, questions, and topic suggestions at profrjstarr@outlook.com. Every message helps shape future episodes, ensuring the discussions remain relevant, thought-provoking, and meaningful. For those who find value in these explorations, subscribing and leaving a review is a great way to support the podcast and bring these insights to a wider audience. Until next time, stay curious, stay thoughtful, and keep exploring the psychology of us.